Imagine a world where the wars of the future are not fought over oil or gold, but over something far more basic: water. Former World Bank Vice President Ismail Serageldin once warned, "If the wars of this century were fought over oil, the wars of the next century will be fought over water. Unless we change our approach today." That warning feels less like prophecy and more like reality unfolding before our eyes. Water is life itself. It sustains our crops, fuels our industries, quenches our thirst. But across the globe, rivers are drying, aquifers are shrinking, and populations are rising. Add the pressure of climate change, longer droughts, unpredictable floods, melting glaciers, and water becomes not just a resource, but a weapon, a bargaining chip, and a trigger for conflict. Let's take a journey through the world's great rivers: the Nile, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Indus, the Mekong, and the Brahmaputra. These rivers, once celebrated as cradles of civilization, are now emerging as flashpoints of geopolitical struggle. Before getting into the details, please like and share this video and subscribe to The Macro Decoded. It really helps. Let's get started. The Nile, a battle for survival. For Egypt, the Nile is everything. Nearly all of its people, its farms, and its economy depend on this single river. But most of the water that sustains Egypt originates far upstream, in the Ethiopian highlands. Here lies the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Africa's largest hydropower project and Ethiopia's proud declaration of progress. To Ethiopians, the dam represents energy, growth, and a chance to lift millions from poverty. But to Egypt, it represents danger. The dam's massive reservoir gives Ethiopia power over the flow of the Blue Nile. Egypt fears that during droughts, its very lifeline could be cut off. Egyptian leaders have called the Nile a red line. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has vowed not to lose a single drop. Ethiopian leaders, meanwhile, insist the dam is only for electricity, not to harm their neighbors. Yet the two sides remain locked in mistrust. Negotiations have dragged on for years, but no binding agreement exists. So what happens if Ethiopia holds back too much water? What if Egypt faces crippling shortages? Will this remain a war of words, or could it ignite into something far more dangerous? The answer could define the stability of Northeast Africa for decades to come. The Tigris and Euphrates, Turkey's upstream power. Travel east to the land once known as Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The twin rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates have fed Iraq and Syria for thousands of years. Today, however, they are being throttled. Turkey, controlling the headwaters, has built a vast network of dams under its southeastern Anatolia project. For Turkey, these dams mean electricity and irrigation. For Iraq and Syria, they mean shrinking rivers and parched farmlands. Since the 1970s, Iraq's share of water has dropped by as much as 80%. Wetlands are disappearing, crops are failing, and families are leaving their homes in desperation. Protests in Iraq have already erupted over water shortages. In Syria, drought helped push rural families into cities, stoking the unrest that fueled the civil war. Turkey insists it is simply managing resources. But downstream nations see something else: an upstream giant holding their lifeline hostage. Without a binding treaty, every dry season risks pushing Iraq and Syria closer to collapse. Will these rivers, once symbols of abundance, now become triggers for instability and conflict? The Indus, an agreement under strain. Few treaties in history are as remarkable as the Indus Waters Treaty between India and Pakistan. Signed in 1960, it survived wars, crises, and decades of hostility. For over 60 years, engineers from both sides quietly cooperated, even as their armies clashed. But now that legacy is at risk. Climate change is making the Indus more erratic. Glaciers feeding the river are melting unpredictably. Floods and droughts swing back and forth. And in 2025, India announced it would suspend the treaty, accusing Pakistan of sponsoring cross-border terrorism. For Pakistan, this was a nightmare. Nearly all of its agriculture depends on the Indus. Without the treaty's guarantees, Pakistan fears India could withhold or release water at will, starving fields, flooding cities, or crippling hydroelectric plants. Already, Pakistan struggles with water scarcity and poor infrastructure. Any disruption could spark a humanitarian disaster. The Indus Treaty was a model of cooperation in a hostile region. Its unraveling threatens to turn water into yet another battleground between two nuclear-armed neighbors. The Brahmaputra and Mekong, China's upstream advantage. High on the Tibetan Plateau lies Asia's water tower. From here flow the great rivers of the continent, including the Brahmaputra and the Mekong. This geography gives China a powerful advantage, and its neighbors a source of constant anxiety. On the Brahmaputra, China is building a colossal hydropower dam near the Indian border. India fears this project could reduce dry season flows by up to 85%. The risk is not just shortages, it's control. In a conflict, could China unleash a flood or choke the river as leverage? To counter, India plans its own massive dam. The race is on, and the stakes are enormous for millions in India and Bangladesh who depend on this river. Meanwhile, on the Mekong, China has already built 11 dams upstream. During the severe drought of 2019 to 2020, downstream nations like Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam suffered record lows, while water levels inside China's dams stayed high. Farmers blamed Beijing for hoarding water. Fish populations plummeted, rice crops failed, and Vietnam's delta, home to half its rice production, suffered saltwater intrusion. China insists its dams stabilize flows, but critics argue they destabilize ecosystems and economies downstream. With no binding agreements, mistrust festers. For Southeast Asia, the Mekong is more than a river. It is food security, livelihoods, and survival. Water, migration, and security. What happens when rivers dry up? People move. Droughts and water shortages have already forced millions to migrate. From Syrian farmers fleeing the 2007 drought to Iraqi families abandoning dried marshes. Such displacement strains cities, fuels unrest, and can even create openings for extremist groups to recruit. The United Nations now warns that water scarcity is a global security issue. It multiplies risks, turning fragile societies into unstable ones and unstable regions into flashpoints. Can water become a source of peace? The phrase water wars is powerful, but conflict is not inevitable. History shows us that rivers, precisely because they are shared, can also push nations toward cooperation. The Indus Treaty, though now in peril, kept peace for 6 decades. Israel and Jordan share water even while clashing politically. Countries in southern Africa have built joint river commissions to manage scarce supplies. These examples prove that cooperation is possible if nations see water not as a weapon, but as a shared lifeline. Technology offers hope as well. Israel has pioneered water recycling and desalination. New irrigation methods can cut waste. Smarter agreements can ensure that rivers are managed for droughts as well as floods. The choice is stark. Will nations turn water into a tool for survival together, or into a trigger for conflict? The wars of the future may indeed be fought over water, but they don't have to be. From the Nile to the Tigris, the Indus to the Mekong, the rivers of our world remind us of a basic truth. Water connects us all. If we see rivers only as borders to be defended, then every drought becomes a threat, every dam a weapon. But if we see water as a bridge, then these same rivers can unite nations, sustain billions, and preserve peace. The next global flashpoint may be water. The question is, will it be the cause of our conflicts or the catalyst for our cooperation? If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, share the video, and subscribe to The Macro Decoded. Don't forget the bell so you never miss a chapter.